everybody, and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, I have a special breakdown covering one of the most important indexes that we're going to find in crypto, and that is the M1 money supply. Bitcoin is breaking out against the M1 money supply for the first time since 2017, and that was our biggest bull run that we'd ever seen before. I firmly believe that the charts are telling us that we're about to get the biggest bull run, the most institutional demand that we've ever seen, and retail adoption in the same ways that 2017 was. It was completely normal to wake up and you'd be up 3 to 5x on a daily time frame, and I'm here to tell you guys again that I think that we're moments away from starting the exact same thing once more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you find value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, and if you guys want to see how I'm investing my portfolio long term, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Thank you guys so much. With that being said, let's jump right into it today. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I am so excited to bring with you this update because I know that if there's something that's going to help, answer why I believe that this cycle is going to be so much more powerful, going into the real charts and the data on what it shows, this is going to be that video that is going to simplify so many thoughts, feelings, concerns, any doubts that you guys have had in this cycle, because I'm telling you guys, I've been in crypto for 8 years, going on my 9th year now. I've made a lot of money in these markets. I've helped a lot of other people make money, and the constant thing I'm always being told by people that are 20, 30 years older than me is how fortunate I am to be in the position to just be investing into crypto so young. Not necessarily my channel or anything. The fact that we're just positioned early inside of, arguably the biggest bull market ever, it's a huge blessing. And I want you guys to be aware of that, probably because a lot of you guys don't hear that very often. A lot of you guys aren't probably going to different conferences, talking to people in the markets, talking to people, that are a lot older than you that have been investing for a long time. And at the end of the day, the thing that they've always told me is how fortunate I am to be in this situation. And I firmly believe that that is universal. If you have any amount of money in crypto right now, you can make a financial fortune. I'm telling you guys from somebody who's done it firsthand and somebody who actually sold a lot of my best performing assets in the last cycle too early. I've really made a lot of mistakes, but even with those mistakes, I've still managed to do very, very well. And I get excited with this cycle because I see all of the same things that we need to play out for the biggest cycle ever. We have adoption like never before. We have on-ramps like never before. We have true hype. We have fundamental drivers of value this cycle between, actual political candidates pivoting to be pro-crypto. We're seeing a lot more adoption with the ETFs, billions and billions of dollars coming on chain. And I do believe that this is ultimately going to just continue to play out from here. Now, what we're going to be starting off this video is talking about the global M1 money supply, because this is the first time since 2017 that Bitcoin has broken out against that M1 money supply. For you guys that don't know what the M1 money supply is, the M1 is the money supply that is composed of currency, demand deposits, and liquid deposits, which includes saving deposits. M1 includes the most liquid portions of the money supply because it contains currency and assets that either are or can be quickly converted to cash. So it really just is a reflection of how much money can quickly be converted into cash. And the more that we're starting to see Bitcoin breaking out of that trend, the more that we end up seeing a lot of that money actually rotate back into the markets. One of the things I've noticed is inside of periods where there's a lot less confidence in the market, when retail is struggling. If we look at the last cycle, we had record inflation that was taking place. We were in the middle of a global pandemic. So there was a lot of negative things that were really dictating why the last cycle wasn't going to be as hype driven. Now, when we're comparing the two, I think that this cycle is completely different because when we're comparing the similarities of 2017, in 2017, basically we had just gone through 8 years of the Obama administration. We went through the 2008 financial crisis in the stock market, everything dipped. And then we went through another big dip in 2011 and 2012. And then it was once President Trump got elected that shortly after that, the market started actually breaking out and going into a brand new all-time high. And it was in that move that we saw the Bitcoin price actually outperform against the M1 money supply. And it was the first time that it ever did that. When we're looking at that last cycle, or what I should say in 2017, it was the biggest altcoin cycle that we had ever seen, and it wasn't even close. I mean, I was trading the entirety of the last cycle. I made way more money in the last cycle than I ever did in 2017. But what I saw in 2017 was just mind-blowing. You could wake up, see something up 600%, go and buy it, wake up the next day and you're up another 3x. That really isn't as, likely inside of this market cycle yet, but I think that that is set to change. Now, what we're looking at here on a long-term basis is just an ascending triangle. Bitcoin has been coiling inside of this triangle all the way since we peaked at 2017. In the last cycle, this made a lower high. It was never actually able to get outside of that. And I think that this is a reflection of the retail money that exists. When Bitcoin is breaking out of this M1 money supply, it shows that there's a lot more strength in the market. The economy's doing better. It shows that people have more money that they're willing to spend. And oftentimes it creates the biggest type of cycles. I think that with Bitcoin breaking out of this trend, it's showing the early signs that we're about to see a much bigger cycle than people are leading you to believe. Now, what I find really interesting here is if we're looking at the Bitcoin against the M1 money supply, and it's just broken out of this for the first time since 2017, giving us our biggest cycle, I find it very interesting that when we come over here and actually look at the Bitcoin dominance chart, Bitcoin dominance in and of itself has been inside of a descending triangle over that exact same amount of time, right? So this is an ascending triangle where you have an ascending support, you have a horizontal resistance, and then this is a descending triangle where we have a horizontal support and then we have a descending resistance, right? Descending, descending. I find it very interesting that over this exact same amount of time, Bitcoin is now finally breaking out of that M1 money supply for the first time since 2017, and it's looking like the Bitcoin dominance is about to be topping and actually breaking into a new all-time low for the first time since the beginning of that 2017 cycle. I've, been very adamant about telling you guys that I firmly believe that this will be the biggest altcoin cycle that we've ever seen, and when we're looking at all of the data and the charts that really dictate the likelihood of us having a big bull run where there's enough money to go around, where not only are the institutions getting fat and happy, but the retail investors are able to jump in and drive up prices as well. We didn't have the retail investors in the last cycle because they were all hurting. Everybody was struggling just trying to survive in the pandemic. Everybody was so scared of leaving the house without a freaking mask on that they were definitely not considering about spending all of their money on Bitcoin. They were worried about just surviving in that time. Will I have a job? Will I die from the coronavirus? That was what everybody's thoughts were back then. This cycle, it's completely different. The stock market's back in a new all-time high. I don't think it matters so much around who's president, but we're seeing, the data comes out every single month. Inflation is a little bit lower month over month. We're seeing jobs actually going up, earnings are going up. So everything that we need to see for a strong economy from the numbers wise is bullish. So anybody that says it's not is just honestly just ignoring what the bigger picture and the data is saying. Because with this breaking out, it shows that we're in a much stronger economy than people will lead you to believe. Because we're looking at the Bitcoin dominance sitting right at this major descending resistance at another topping point at the same moment that this M1 money supply is broken out and is about to go into price discovery, I find it very, very likely that we're about to do another one of these. And I've been very adamant about telling you guys that we're going to see a big drop inside of the dominance, and it's going to fall to a brand new all-time low. I've had the target of basically 15 to 25% dominance. I really think that we're going to be going for an absolutely massive sell-off in this move. It's because we have so much more altcoins. In the last couple months, I think that there was over like 1.5 million altcoins minted on the blockchain, and that's, universally across all of them. There wasn't even 3,000 tokens total in 2017. So there's a lot of a difference here. And I think by default, we're going to continue to see this bleed as more altcoins are added, as they ultimately gain market dominance over Bitcoin. Now, the question is, are we going to see a universal alt run where everything blows up in the same ways that it was in 2017? I find it likely, yes, because we're already seeing, meme coins blowing up this entire move as Bitcoin's ran after the ETF into a new all-time high. We're seeing tons of demand around these meme coins. Everybody's just speculating on any type of funny money. That's the type of stuff that you see inside of a retail cycle. We didn't see that in the last cycle. Yes, we had Elon Musk pump Dogecoin, but aside from that one thing that happened, we really weren't seeing the same parallels where there's really not a whole lot of support outside of the crypto community in of itself, but we're seeing meme coins really taking the spotlight. On-chain altcoins, any layer 2 altcoins and the ecosystems built on them, they've all been suffering. Anything to do with Ethereum was suffering. But I think that this is that shifting point that we're about to see. Once this thing is really going to start breaking out in the same ways that it did in that last cycle of 2017, I think that this is going to end up topping, and we're seeing confluence, because this M1 supply, Bitcoin against the M1 supply, is in a big ascending triangle, and Bitcoin dominance in and of itself is in a big descending triangle over the exact same amount of time. It tells me that we are for sure about to see another one of these 2017 type of cycles. So when I'm looking at this, there's a couple factors that we need to consider. One of those factors being the Bitcoin chart, obviously, and really talking a little bit about this dip that we just experienced the other day. Now, many people, including myself, have wondered, is this the ending of that dip? Are we going to start to see a bottoming right now? Or what is this going to look like? I've drawn extensively about the Wyckoff accumulation, why I believe that we would start bottoming down in here, and I still lean towards that fact. Don't get me wrong, guys, we can still actually make a couple months of consolidation down here at these range lows before we ever end up breaking out, and it's almost to be expected after having such a big flush to the downside. The big picture is the macro view. We know that the macro is extremely strong. We know that it's super bullish, and even inside of this most recent, last week of this dip, altcoins have actually held up better. We're seeing Bitcoin dominance continuing to sell off. So even though Bitcoin has made this big drop, we're actually seeing altcoins outperforming. Many altcoins kept breaking out, held support, and really never even dipped for a lower low inside of all of this turmoil. Oftentimes when you're going to see something like that, it can be an early indication that the market is getting ready to just kind of round out before we get that next leg up. Now, the big thing I wanted to talk to you guys about here with Bitcoin, I noticed a pattern that has been playing out, and I noticed a couple patterns actually. If we zoom out and look at June as being kind of a shifting point inside of the market, so we're going to come through and draw a line every single June. And you're going to notice that it's a major shifting point inside of Bitcoin for some reason. We can see that all the way back in 2020, when we first bottomed out of the COVID dip and went back up into resistance, it was at the ending of that correction that we saw June, and then that was the beginning before we started to see that breakout. Now we can go another year in advance, and we can go to the next month of June, and we can see that that was pretty much right here flush inside of the mid-range of this bottom that we saw right around that 30K mark. And it was inside of this move that took us into that next all-time high. Now, if we come over and look at June once again, we're looking at, once again, a major shifting point at the very bottom of this big capitulation. So oftentimes we're going to see either the ending of a correction or at the bottom of a big capitulation event. It has generally happened inside of these summer timeframes, and I find it very interesting. We can come over here and look at the next June, and it was a lot of the same things. It was at the very bottom of that 25K retest, basically 24,500, that we saw that next major shifting point. Now, if we're looking over here, we're seeing that June has been a major shifting point. And if we're looking at where we're at right now, we're also doing the same thing in June. So if we're zooming out and we're just looking at how June has behaved historically for Bitcoin, it's oftentimes marked huge shifting points inside of the market. This was when we bottomed and first started breaking out after COVID. Over in here was where we bottomed after the 65K top. Right here was where we started to bottom for like 6 months after the Terra Luna collapse. And then right over here was when we made our first true higher high, broke out of that 25K region, and then flipped it as support. So for us to be having another one of these big capitulation events taking place in the exact same month, I'm just letting you guys know that anytime we've seen a huge capitulation that has happened and is leading us into that June month, whether it's at the beginning or the end of the month, it doesn't really matter. It's just taking place inside of June. It has marked a shifting point inside of the market. So, that's not always going to be the most accurate thing. Markets can obviously distance themselves from patterns, but when we're applying this same pattern with the RSI, you guys are going to notice that there's another thing playing out here in the shorter time frames. So I've gone ahead and I've actually made these two gray lines take place at 20 and 25 on the RSI. And if you guys notice that every time we tag this level, whether it's 20 or 25, it's always marked a huge shifting point inside of the market. In fact, it's marked every single local low or the local bottom that we've had, every single one of our major corrections. The only one that it didn't was basically when we first started to break back up and retested 25K. It was at the bottom of that retest. We almost hit that level, but not quite, so I'm not counting it. But every other time that we've ever tagged this, it's always marked a huge shifting point inside of the market. And in yesterday's sell-off, we finally tagged that for the first time since all the way back at that retest of 25K for that second time. every single time we're looking at the RSI retesting this level, it's always marked a huge shifting point in the market. And we can even zoom out and take this a step further. You know, right here, that was another example. Right here was another example at the very bottom of these wicks. Even though we ended up making, you know, a retest of that level, it was still the same universal thing. We can come all the way back into the COVID capitulation. That was another retest of that. We can come even when we started to bottom in all of these short-term local lows leading into the COVID capitulation. Every single local low that this chart is going to have, we oftentimes are going to be retesting 20 or 25 on the RSI. And so when we're looking at June being a major point for reversing inside of the Bitcoin cycle, I don't find it coincidental that this is also taking place right as we're tagging that 25 level on the RSI. This is a point where we're not only seeing kind of what looks to be a Wyckoff accumulation, but it's the first time that the RSI has actually gotten oversold, what I would consider true oversold territory on the daily time frame. And then we're also looking at June being, you know, a major shifting point for cycle bottoms, whether that's a local bottom or, you know, whether that's a complete trend reversal before we make a new high. This has marked a very important shifting point inside of the cycle, and I think we need to continue to pay attention for it today. Now, the big thing I was updating you guys with has been this Wyckoff right here, and it still, you know, applies to the same rules. We can still just sit here and chop around for a little while before we ever end up, you know, finding a bottom. And I think that that's to be expected. We should expect that the next couple months are going to be a lot more of the same choppy price action as we inevitably find some type of local bottom. Now, I'm telling you guys this as somebody who's been through the cycles, as somebody who sees the biggest macro bull run that I've ever seen in crypto playing out. I think that now is the time where we don't want to get too shaken out. Even though we've seen a big dip, a lot of altcoins were providing amazing buy opportunities. And I do think that with us having this final flush, following along with this normal Wyckoff schematic, having us retest this 25 level on the RSI, we're finally in oversold territory, even if this thing rejected and we went for another low. Like I said, we could still peak below this 57K mark before we end up bottoming. And if that's the case, you know, just be aware, be prepared. I don't think it's going to change the big picture. The only thing I'm anticipating is if we do get a flush below, it's going to be a very small one before we probably start to reverse after that point. And I'm not going to be the least bit surprised to see this thing maybe even retest this same level, or oftentimes once we've already hit this 25 or 20 level, you're going to see it just start to go back up again, because we don't normally stay at these low levels on the RSI for very long. The worst case scenario is that this thing sells off and actually retests either 56.5 or even comes all the way back down to like 50 or 52, somewhere right around there for one more final flush. That would shake out all the weak hands, but you know, we could see this thing retest this level or do something like that. It doesn't change anything, guys. We're in a much better opportunity to be buying down here at these levels than we ever are trying to be selling them. We got a massive capitulation yesterday, happening, you know, pretty on par with other corrections. But the big thing I want you guys to be aware of is the macro view. As long as this is bullish, I think that Bitcoin is going to be bullish. And as long as we're breaking out of this M1 supply, this will be the biggest altcoin cycle that we've ever seen. Now, the final chart on today's video is going to be the ETH BTC pair, because if we're wondering what the heck is going to happen to altcoins, it's really going to revolve around what this chart does. Now, Ethereum has been in this downtrend for almost 2 years. You know, we're about 90 days away from a full 2-year correction. We've seen lower lows and lower highs the entirety inside of here. You know, we've never truly been able to get a breakout. But if you guys notice in the shorter time frames, we're finally working on that breakout. And it does look like we're going to be getting it very soon. We're literally at the last moment of defense for the bears before this thing starts to break out. And I firmly believe that we are actually going to. When we're looking in the shorter time frames, technically this is sitting on support of that downtrending resistance. So if you're looking for a good entry, it probably won't be any better than where we're at right now. It's possible we could come back down, but I find it less likely because when we're looking at the shorter time frames, this already completed our first little impulse. We saw 5 waves up. We saw an ABC correction right back down to retest horizontal support. We retested that. Got our first true higher high. I'm going to remove this lower one. And now we're working on a breakout of the downtrending resistance. If ETH BTC is about to start breaking out right here, we're looking at, you know, ultimately the Bitcoin dominance chart falling. I don't find it coincidental that this is looking at a top. We have tons of bearish divergence on the RSI and hidden bearish divergence. But when we're looking at the ETH BTC pair, it's right on that cusp of breaking out. I find it very likely that Ethereum is finally going to get that rotation. Next week is when, I think it's like July 2nd that the Ethereum ETF is projected to go live. And so we're going to be seeing a lot more money coming into Ethereum as a whole. I think people that missed out on buying Bitcoin once the ETF got approved, they're going to rush to kind of, make back their losses on Ethereum. And this thing is going to be running back up to these range highs. We're looking at like a 0.08 per Bitcoin. And that's what I think is going to be playing out here. But, big picture, this thing's going to go into a new all-time high. Once we get about above that prior all-time high of the last cycle, I really think that this thing's going to start doing something that, we haven't seen since that 2017 trend. There's just so many charts telling us this, guys. And I couldn't be more excited. I can't be more excited for the people that get to trade this, make profit off this cycle, because I really think that we're about to make a lot of money in comparison, especially in comparison with the last cycle. This thing will be a lot more like 2017. So guys, if you found value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. If you guys do want to end up seeing how I'm investing my portfolio long term, links are in the description. Go ahead and sign up on my website. That's where I post everything I'm doing with my money. When I take profits at the end of this cycle, it all gets posted inside of my Discord server. So if you want to join the website, links are in the description. With that being said, thank you all so much for the support. I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.